All right, folks. Thanks for checking out the video. I want to go over an article today that debunks something that I have seen in the mainstream media recently, stating that America has a red state crime problem, which is a lie by omission. Okay. So the mainstream media will point out that, well, St. Louis is in Missouri, which is a red state, or New Orleans is in Louisiana, which is a red state. So, why are they having problems there? Well, there's an article here from Selwyn Duke from the newamerican.com, and it says murder study. America is really quite safe, except for some Democrat areas. Now, stay tuned because this article that I'm going to read has some really interesting statistics and some really good information that you can use if you're having a debate with people about gun crime in the United States. So, article starts here. America doesn't have a crime problem, wrote commentator Daniel Greenfield recently. It has a Democrat problem. At issue is a finding that a mere 1% of United States counties, Democrat areas, account for a whopping 42% of our murders. So it's no wonder people issue quips such as, just taking guns away from Democrats would reduce shootings by 90%, if only such gun control actually worked. But all this illustrates a truth. America really is a very safe country, except for small pockets of violence. While there are demographic reasons for this too, more on that later, the Democrat link warrants elaboration. As Greenfield wrote at frontpagemag.com, Democrats desperately trying to spin high crime rates caused by their pro crime policies began falsely claiming that crime was a Republican problem. New York Times columnist Paul Krugman, who once claimed that the internet would have no more of an impact than the fax machine, argued that high crime was really a Republican problem and decided to prove it by claiming that Oklahoma's murder rate was almost 50% higher than California's, almost double New York's. Krugman, who somehow has a Nobel Prize, failed to note that most of the murders were coming out of Oklahoma City and Tulsa. In last year's gubernatorial election, Republican Governor Kevin Stitt won most of the state, while Oklahoma, Tulsa, and Cleveland counties, however, went to leftist Democrat Joy Hoffmeister. The blue parts of Oklahoma are also red with blood. The fact is, the rates of violent crime are higher in Oklahoma under your watch, Hoffmeister had claimed in a viral gubernatorial debate attack. Oklahoma had 287 murders in 2020. 166 came out of Oklahoma County and Tulsa County, the two counties that supported Hoffmeister. So, very interesting. Goes on to say, Greenfield draws statistics from a groundbreaking study published in January by John R. Lott of the Crime Prevention Research Center. In it, the researcher presented good news along with the bad. When it comes to murder, there are three types of counties in the United States, Lott wrote. Most counties experience no murders, a smaller set where there are a few murders, and then a tiny set of counties where murders are very common. In 2020, 52% of counties with 10% of the population had no murders. 68% of counties had no more than one murder, and about 18% of the population. These counties account for only 2.6% of all murders in the country. So you have about 28% of the population lives in areas where murders are virtually unheard of, if not unheard of completely. So while America is often portrayed as a wild west where guns and life are cheap, the truth is more nuanced. Consider, Britain is often used as a paradigm, with its relatively low murder rate attributed by many to its strict gun control. Yet New Hampshire, for example, has far less gun control and a higher firearm ownership rate, but also a lower intentional homicide rate than the UK does. Right? Don't we always hear that? Oh, well, they don't have gun crime like we do in the UK because they're not allowed to own guns there, but you have a state like New Hampshire where guns are all over the place and they have a lower intentional homicide rate. But then there's the bad news. The worst 1% of American counties, the worst 31 counties, have 21% of the population and 42% of the murders. Lott also explains The worst 2% of counties, 62 counties, contain 31% of the population and 56% of the murders. The worst 5% of counties contain 47% of the population and account for 73% of the murders. Providing yet more perspective, Lott points out that even within those counties, the murders are very heavily concentrated in small areas. In fairness, some of the safe areas, he says, such as the town I reside in, I seek to escape, are Democrat themselves. So what's the difference? The people are, explained Professor Thomas Sowell in 2012. When it comes to the rate of gun ownership, that is higher in rural areas than in urban areas. But the murder rate is higher in urban areas, he wrote in one of many examples. The rate of gun ownership is higher among whites than among blacks, but the murder rate is higher among blacks. It's not politically correct to say, hence few say it, but demographics is one of the best crime rate predictors. In New York City, for instance, approximately 96% of all crime and 98% of gun related crime are committed by blacks and Hispanics, even though the two groups together constitute just over 52% of the population. This said, it nonetheless is true that a demographic largely responsible for crime is a political one: Democrats. As Greenfield points out, Democrats cater to criminals, and after jettisoning the white working class and the small business middle class, became the party of criminals. From police defunding to the Black Lives Matter riots to mass jailbreaks and the legalization of drugs and shoplifting in major cities, they embraced pro-crime policies that unleashed a massive crime wave. Greenfield also writes, and now they pretend not to know what's causing the crime. There's no mystery here, he continues. Crime is caused by repeat offenders. In the 90s, we began locking them up, and then about 5 years ago, we began letting them go at the federal and state level. Remember, too, that left wing Democrat policies have exacerbated the black family's dissolution. Result: black illegitimacy is now 73%, have undermined America's morality via the sexual devolutionary agenda and other corruptive phenomena, and even claim that virtue byproducts such as punctuality and industriousness are white norms that blacks need and embrace. The bottom line: whatever your race, people promoting the bad over the good and telling you good is bad probably aren't your friends. So, some very interesting information here, and um, it's something I've, largely knew instinctually that this type of crime is heavily concentrated in the United States. So, just like the numbers point out here, and I'll post a link to the article so you can actually see this stuff for yourself. I know sometimes numbers are easier when you visually see them rather than hearing it, but that the vast majority of the United States has very little crime, and you have a relative handful of cities and urban areas where you have a ton of crime, particularly violent crime and gun related crime. So keep all this in mind the next time you have a debate with somebody that says, "Oh, we need to get rid of the guns," and America is so unsafe. So that way you'll be armed with information to help make your case. So let me know what you all think, and as always, we'll see you on the next one.